Okay, let's go.
This episode is one that you would likely find frustrating, but remember that our industry is damaged by your hating. A world without an otter would be an angling world of plenty, but the buggers are bloody everywhere. Where once was one, there's 20. Fishery friends, what do we do about the issue that we've got? What about the rivers where the bastard otters have ate the lot? The public are neutral, it's the otters that they'll favor, and the otters have a taste for that big slimy carpy flavor. Commenting on Facebook to kill every otter on this land is certainly a good way to get our passion forever banned. Whatever we do, we must not go out fighting fire with more fiery fire, because fire makes a big fiery fire, fire even higher. Welcome Dave Webb to the Fishery Fastlane.
Hello and welcome to the Fishery Fastlane podcast. We've come down to Devon to speak to Dave Webb here from the Wild Otter Trust. Now I'm going to introduce Dave with his credentials attached to the footer of his email, which is, might take me a minute. It's a lot there. We've got UK Wild Otter Trust founder, Specialist Eurasian Otter Cub Rehabilitation Centre founder, Eurasian Otter Specialist Advisor to River Action UK, Otter Predation Advisor to the Ornamental Aquatic Trade Association, CL36 Humane Trapping Licence Registered, Fishery Investigation and Support Team founder, leader trainer, Fishery Advisor in Predation, Mitigation and Protections levels. Got more yet. Specialist Eurasian Otter Ecology Reports and Surveys, most dedicated Otter Conservation Trust Western Europe, Best Specialist Conservation Trust 2023, Wildlife Care and Conservation Certificate Level 3, Wildlife Rescue and Conservation Certificate, ICOES accredited, IFAW Conservation Animal Action Awards 2017, and last but not least, the Prime Minister Points of Light Award, June 2023. So there's quite a significant load behind you there, Dave. Can you describe what it is you do?
Yeah, well, firstly, that list makes me sound more important than I actually am, I'll be honest. So basically, the primary work we do, I started up the UK Wild Otter Trust, which was to work with anglers primarily. That's why it started. And then we got into wild otter orphaned cub rehabilitation. So that forms a big part of what we do, and we still work with fisheries now, and we still work on education, engagement, and building trust with various organisations like the angling fraternity.
Right. So what are the goals of the Wild Otter Trust? Sorry?
It's more for us now to it's twofold. One is obviously to work with anglers and get an idea of the issues that they face, because they don't just stay stagnant, they change daily as working with otters does. The behaviour and everything all very changes, completely different. And my aim really is to get the majority of the angling fraternity to trust us as a otter organisation.
Yeah.
Previously, there's been some other smaller organisations that haven't really put their head above the parapet and said, actually, we understand that there's issues with otters for angling. I've come from an angling background. I've fished all my life. I still fish now. And I've also been brought up with otters in rivers and the work I'm doing now. So I see it from both sides. So I hope I've got a balanced view on what we do and how we do it and how we portray ourselves.
Yeah.
But it's all about building trust. It's all about making, particularly in fishery terms, it better for anglers and fishery owners to protect their stock and understand why that's necessary and the best way to do that and as cheaply as possible.
Yeah, we spoke briefly before we set up the podcasting kit here, and we were looking around the pens, and I knew straight away as soon as I introduced you as Wild Otter Trust, I knew there'd be people listening that they want to come after you, and I bet you get a lot of hate from especially online when anything we put up related to otters. It's always the same, that anglers that they're giving angling a bad name by basically trying to fight fire with fire, being a very aggressive, kill them all and all this. And this is exactly why I thought it'd be good to come and chat to you, to give you're a fishery advisor as well for otters. And I think there's a lot of value there to actually fisheries that are listening to this that will be able to get some advice on what they should be doing and understand otters rather than think killing them all is the right.
Facebook particularly is probably its own worst enemy, and it could be the enemy of anglers. It could be the enemy of anything conservation minded. There is a section of people. Thankfully, it is only a minority of people, but of course, for the amount of people that go angling and fishing, that minority is still quite a lot of people. And there's been things, from the Barber Society, like petitions for culling. They say farmers' rights and things like that. That isn't the way forward. We're talking about a native species. We have to educate these people to understand that if you don't have an apex predator, like the otter, for example, if you've got nothing there keeping that in check, everything below it is going to fail. And it's going to be worse off, both genetically and in terms of, growing and moving on.
Yeah.
And that alone is the worst thing. People that are on Facebook and they type the frustrating comments, frustrating for them. And I get the frustration, I absolutely do. But putting that on there is only doing more damage and harm to the way that the general public perceive angling at the moment. I said to you earlier, like it or you don't, whether you agree with it or not, there's people out there that will see angling as a blood sport. They'll see it the same as fox hunting. They'll see it the same as deer hunting, shooting, whatever. We don't want it to be portrayed like that. There's far more to fishing and angling than that. So if people are still shouting and saying, kill them, shoot them, poison them, and it's not just otters, it's anything that affects angling, they just seem to want to get rid of. The only people that's doing harm to that sport are those anglers.
Yeah.
Not the things that they're moaning about.
No.
If they put as much effort into concentrating on the state of the rivers, for example, wouldn't the world be a better place? At the moment, it ain't.
Yeah, I think it's when you said that you're an angler yourself, I think if you weren't an angler, it would be completely different. But because you can sympathise with knowing the angling journey and fishery managers that put so much effort into creating the stock that they've got, and then for that to be the rug to be pulled beneath them by an otter or something, it's understandable why people get frustrated. But we just need to take a step back, I think, and just actually realise how we're perceived by people, that there are a much bigger audience than angling that are going to look at angling and go, well, that maybe the otter's not the problem, like you said, it's the anglers.
Yeah.
But first, I want to sort of explain where I want this to go, and sort of some fact files on otters and some wives' tales and some advice for fisheries to sort of round it up. But I want to go right back to the start now and hear your story of how you got into where you are now. Yeah. What did your career path look like?
So I first got involved with otters when I was at school, supposed to be at school. I lived in the country, I brought up in the country, I brought out the wildlife and angling. And we had a river, we were lucky we had a river running, at the bottom of where we lived, our land. And there's also a big woodland. And I used to walk down, catch the school bus. So I had to go down about half a mile track to get to the bus. So luckily you couldn't see it from the house. So I used to come down to the end of the wood, jump in the wood because the parents couldn't see me, wait for them to go to work, and then come out and go down to the river. And then when I knew the bus was due back, we had one house next to us, and she used to catch the school bus as well. So I used to wait for that to come up, wait for my parents to come home, then go down and then pretend I got off the bus and walk back up. So that's how I started. And that's where I saw the first otter.
Okay.
Didn't really know what it was, so looked it up and I thought, really interesting. And I started learning more about them even at that age, so I knew a fair bit. And then I had a bit of a break from otters purely because a friend of mine wasn't very well and he had a herd of deer that he wanted, or deer farm park that he needed help with, so I went and took a bit of a break from that and helped him with that. So I've worked with every species of deer as well. And then we moved to Devon, where we saw a mother with 2 cubs. And that sort of reignited the passion for it. And I started, the Otter Trust was actually founded in 1998, but I didn't bring it into the public eye until much later, when I started up a Facebook group. Purely I started the group just because I knew people would put photos of their otter or their photos of otters on there that I could look at. So it saved me going out looking for them because I just see it's easier to look at that. And with that came a huge amount of positive comments, which was great. But also that came with that were the idiot comments and a lot of frustration and anger, which was clearly from anglers about, you said earlier, shoot them, kill them, drown them, do whatever. They shouldn't be here. They're not native. They've been released en masse and all this crap. I thought, why are they doing that? So I started looking into that a lot deeper. And then I started talking to a few anglers, and that's how I met Joss Faulkner and Mark Walsingham, who had Ashmead. So we started having a bit of a conversation. We talked to the Angling Trust as well. And it was decided that what was needed was a humane option that could give fisheries the chance to get a problematic otter out of its fishery rather than them shoot it and kill it and face prosecution. Mm-hmm. So that's what we started doing. So we started working on that. And that's basically the journey to that, how we got to where we are now with the trapping thing with the fisheries and working with the fisheries. We still work with the fisheries now. I still talk with Mark and Joss and various other guys. But that was my personal journey into that. And then we got, of course, into the rehabilitation side of that. That was sort of more accident than intention. A friend of mine down in Dartmoor had 2 otter cubs come in. And he basically said one night, you should have these 2 cubs to do the rehab because you're the Otter Trust. So I said, yeah, all right. So we built a couple of pens in the garden we used to live, and we had them, did it very successfully. And then from that, snowballed into this now to what is the world's largest specialist Eurasian otter cub centre.
Yeah.
And it's happened in a very short space of time. So I'm talking from sort of 2016 to now, 2025. So in the grander scale of things, it's a very, very small time scale for the amount of otters that we've had in and what we've done with it and the successes that we've had.
So this otter issue, it seems like in my lifetime over perhaps the last 20 years, it's been quite an emerging issue for fisheries. It seems like I remember back when I started my journey when I was at college, and I hadn't seen even for 5 or 10 years into working with fisheries on the fishery consultant side of it and dealing with fisheries every day, and I still hadn't seen an otter sort of 5 or 10 years down the line. And then I saw one, and now from that point to now, I've seen loads and loads of it. Yeah. So is that is that sort of relative to the trajectory of the numbers that you've seen? Or how have you, I guess there's 2 questions there. Like, when you started the Otter Trust, is that part of the trajectory that we've seen when it was set up that otters have now accelerated? Or would you say that the trust was there and it's sort of nature that you're just a rehab centre, right? So you're not farming them here as such.
We're a rehab centre. That's the first thing. Make the point. There is a myth out there amongst many anglers that actually we sit there out here and we just breed as many as we can to release as many as we can. Every 6 months of the year. That's not what happens. We are purely a rehabilitation centre. So we pull the cubs in that are in need of help, like any other wildlife centre would, foxes, badgers, you name it. We're doing nothing different apart from it's otters. And then they're rehabilitated for a year, and then they are released back into the wild, into suitable areas and habitats, and as far away from fisheries as possible that we can.
So it's just natural reproduction that I've seen this, because from when I saw my first otter to now, the numbers obviously got to a point where it's actually a question for later where the future is where we're gonna be.
The one thing that nobody can give you is a population number.
No,
people say, and I've seen it bandied about, 15,000 in the whole of the UK. I've seen people like the Mammal Society 10 years ago said there were 15,000 otters in total. 6,000 were in Scotland, 4,000, whatever was, spread around, and the rest of them spread around the UK. The last survey they did, those figures come out, and they said it was 15,000, but that was like 10 years later. It was clear there's not the same amount of otters out there. We are seeing more now, both in daylight and at night, and in odd what I call odd places. So you will see them in town centres. We have many reports of them running up high streets. We have many reports of them in gardens. Yeah, they hit garden ponds, particularly in the winter when the rivers are in flood.
Yeah.
They don't want to be in any of those places. The only place you want to be is in the river because that's their natural habitat. But we see lots of disturbance. There's more people out, walking with dogs. There's more people taking to recreational, followings on rivers. There's more habitat destruction. There's more building. There's more road infrastructure. Everywhere is generally busy, and they can't all stay there. They will move away from what they perceive as a danger. So they're being seen more in towns, for example, and they're being seen more in garden ponds. And that's not another myth. It's not because they've eaten all the fish in the river, so they're looking somewhere else. That's absolute rubbish. It's because they are being forced to move through human intervention yet again.
Right.
The worst thing on this planet is humans.
What would the cause be of the trough that the population numbers got to a point where they were at a level so low that we felt we had to bring them back? What was the cause of the decline?
So there was an issue with organochlorines, particularly DDT, and that was proven to be affecting the reproductive systems in otters, particularly females.
What was DDT, sorry?
Deldrin.
Yeah.
It's a horrible chemical. It's a farming chemical.
Okay.
It was. It's been banned now, so it's not used.
Yeah.
And then a chap called Philip Ware decided it would be a good idea to captive breed some otters based on surveys that are primarily carried out by Counting Spring, which again we'll get to that maybe a bit later, but it's actually a waste of time and it gives you false information.
Right.
Started a captive breeding program and started to put animals out in places like North Yorkshire, so areas where the survey previously had shown there was positive signs, but the last survey showed that they weren't, which again doesn't actually mean anything. But so he started putting them into places like North Yorkshire, Norfolk, parts of Wales, Midlands, and sort of Cotswolds area, particularly around the water park.
What years would that have been when that?
So that ceased in 2006. So it would have ran from, so I think it was around about the 70s, 80s through to 2006. So it went on for a long time.
Okay, yeah.
What would have, in my view, and it doesn't make me an expert, there's no such thing as an expert in otters, by the way, so I'm glad you didn't say that, because you never know everything there is to know. In my view, it would have been better to not have had that knee-jerk reaction, start a captive breeding program, because whilst all this was going on, the population that was there were still breeding. So it would have been a slower and a more natural rejuvenation of that species. But that said, the ones that he did put out, the only recording we've got on paper of how many he put out was 117, I think it said, and UK Wild Otter Trust put out about another 47, 50, something like that, 47 or 50. Are those figures right? I don't know. Nobody will ever know because nobody can view those records.
No.
Probably a reason why you can't view those records, because they're probably not right. So was that captive breeding program necessary? In my view, no, it wasn't. It would have been better to just let it naturally regenerate. But the whole point about that is that people nowadays still moan and blame that captive breeding program for the predation that they've got now, which is absolute rubbish, because that would make the otters sort of 40 years old. They don't live that long.
No.
So that in itself just makes that a complete and utter myth.
Right.
The predation you're seeing of today is as a result of natural regeneration of the species. There's more fisheries around than there was back then. So there's more otters being drawn to more fisheries, so you're more likely to see them. And there's more habitat loss, like I said earlier, and that's pushing them into areas where they don't want to be. At the end of the day, if you find a river that's in heavy flood, and you've got to try and catch a fish, or you can go to this room and catch one out of a goldfish bowl. Which one are you going to choose? You're going to take the easy one. Everything an otter does is maximum return for minimum effort.
Yeah.
So if it can catch one in a lake, it will do that, particularly when it is young. Then it will try and catch them in the river.
What other
Because it's easier.
What other food sources would they look for in a natural environment then?
They have a very varied prey base, so they will eat. Their main diet is 75 to 80% fish based, so anything involving fish. But they will take things like birds, small mammals, eggs, frogs, toads. So if you see frogs and toads is a big one, it's particularly in the spring. So if you find a load of frogs that look like you've got to turn them inside out, that would be an otter.
Okay.
And they'll take. I have known them. They take ducks, and I have known them take a swan, but that's not the norm. That's the exception rather than the rule. There's a famous photograph that floats around with a mink hanging off of a swan. It always does the rounds every year, and the anglers are like, bloody otters, they're killing this swan. It's a mink. Right. It's obviously, you can see it's a mink. So they have a very prey base. So they'll even take fruit.
Right.
But it's 75 to 80% based on fish.
Okay.
And they'll always take the slower fish, so the bigger fish like the carp, the torpid carp. You know, if you had a carp fishery next to a river that had eels in it, they will always go for the eels.
Okay.
Because they're easy to catch.
Right.
They're not responsible for the decline in eels, and they're not responsible for the decline in water vote, which is another myth. Get back to that's not a myth. That is a myth. So that is not the case.
Is it just the Eurasian otter that we're seeing over here? Is there any other otter?
No. Basically, yes. Only the Eurasian otters that we have in the UK. It's the only species native to the UK, and there's nothing else. I think there was some Asian short-clawed otters that escaped from a private collection around the Oxford area.
Right.
But they didn't survive very long at all.
Right.
They were known to die or be killed by the Eurasians in a very, very short period.
Okay.
Very short period.
And how do mink that are seen, is their predatory habits similar to that of an otter? You always get people coming up with theories on comments saying, if you see a mink, there's no otter there. Is that another way to...
It's another myth.
Yeah.
So mink have the same hunting instinct, but they're more ferocious than otters. They will literally wipe out literally anything they see.
Right.
Otters will not.
Okay.
It's a bit like me going to the fridge and drinking all my cider tonight and not having any for 3 days.
Right.
I'm not going to do that, and they're not going to avoid any area of food. So they just do not wipe an area out. Mink potentially could.
Okay, so I think the perception is probably the other way around, isn't it?
It's the other way around, and mink and otters happily coexist in the same territorial ranges, but they do respect each other's territory.
Right.
So a mink would be a threat to newborn otter cubs. An otter, probably not so much of a threat to the mink, because obviously the nest, the hole that they use is a lot smaller for a mink than it is for an otter. So it's easier for a mink to go into an otter thing.
Right.
But that said, if one went in and the mother was there, which is likely she would kill it. There's no question.
Okay.
So they're very defensive. So, but they do happily coexist. So when people say, if you've got otters, you're not going to have mink, or if you've got mink, you're not going to have otters, it's absolute rubbish.
Right. If you've listened this far through the podcast, then I can only assume that you're just as passionate about fishery management as I am. Now, it's not about me, the Fishery Fastlane podcast, but it is associated with me and my business, BP Milling. If you haven't discovered the BP Milling YouTube channel and you enjoy this type of content, then on the BP Milling YouTube channel, there's endless content that deep dives on the topics that really turn the dial for fisheries. There's loads of helpful stuff for fishery managers on there. Any fishery businesses that wants to learn and get the best out of their business, then that is the channel for you. So go and check that out. Now, all that advice on the BP Milling YouTube channel comes from my experience in the industry, which starts way back when I was 17 at Sparsholt College and studying fishery management. I was just as passionate as a student at Sparsholt back then as I am now. In fact, I won an award at the end of my studies for the dedication to my fishery studies. I then went into the industry to work with leading fishery consultant Andrew Ellis, who's got far more industry experience than I'll ever have in dealing with fishery businesses. And I followed him around for the next 15 years, understanding him and his clients, fishery businesses, hundreds of different fishery businesses every single winter, getting in under the hood of their businesses and seeing the good decision making and the bad decision making and the influence that had on their business and their stock and their water quality. And that is what goes into the BP Milling YouTube channel. That experience, not only through working with Andrew, but also the last 20 years growing carp here at home on the farm, and my controversial opinion on how it should be done, and the results that I get that keep up with any leading fish farmer in the country. It's all packed into real punchy content for YouTube. You are spoilt for the amount of stuff that's on that channel. So once you finish listening to this podcast, head over to the BP Milling YouTube channel. Make sure you click that subscribe button, because there's loads more coming all the time for the channel to help you get the best from your fishery and understand what is good advice in fishery management and what is absolute nonsense. So Dave, otter habitat, how are they pretty nomadic, that they don't really settle, or what would they be looking for habitat, the ideal?
So ideal habitat is obviously rivers. That's where they want to be. That's their natural habitat. So they will be nesting in the bank. The halt can be 40 meters or 40 feet underground. So they dig very well. There'll be two entrances, one underwater and one above. And it's generally in an area where it's heavily overgrown and there's a very intricate and sort of tangled complex root system of trees, purely because that makes it feel safe, and it makes it harder if say dogs or something like that about to get in.
So they are quite territorial, or they have a base as such?
They are territorial generally. I've seen on the River Torridge, which is not far from here, I have seen last year's cubs being tolerated by the mother that's got another set of cubs.
Oh, there you go.
Again, that's not the norm. That's the exception rather than the rule. But I have seen it. But generally, they are extremely territorial. So when they mate, the male, once he's done his deed, all he does is mate and then clear off. He plays no part in the rearing of the young at all.
Right.
So he leaves it all to the mother. And then all he'll be doing then is either going up and down the river within his territory, which I say can be up to 40 kilometres, looking for other females. So he could have 6 or 7 on the go at a time. So if you're not doing that, he's eating. And if you're not doing that, he's sleeping. So it's typical male.
Right.
Quiet.
So what point does an otter become sexually mature that it will start to reproduce?
So the cubs will stay with the mother for anything up to 18 months. 12 to 14 is normal, and they become sexually mature at 2 years old.
Right.
So another myth in terms of churning out, 20 cubs a year, doesn't happen. The average lifespan of an otter in the wild is 5 to 6 years. So if you take an average, say 5, the cubs potentially could stay with her for 18 months. She's not sexually mature until she's 2.
Right.
So she's almost 4 when she has a cub or 2.
Right.
So she's almost at the end of her lifespan. So she may, in her lifetime, only have 1, maybe 2 cubs.
Right. And so the females, is she making the job of feeding the young and that just looking after her?
She does everything. Yeah.
Okay. Because when I see them on cameras and you pick up a lone otter, would that be a male then? That if you see it, would a female take the cubs with her? No.
Well, she will when they're a bit bigger. So when they're weaned, so they don't normally come above ground until they're at least 2 months old.
Right.
So that's, again, when we get them in here, we can gauge roughly. So we know they're a minimum of 2 months, and then depending or not whether they're weaned, so i.e. onto solids as opposed to needing bottled milk feeding. So if they're on weaned, that would probably put them at about 3 months. It's a guesstimate of age. It was a very rough indication to us.
Okay.
So we would then say, right, okay, if we think that was 3 months, but we'll actually, in terms of the rehab, we'll say it's 2 months, because then that gives us a month's grace up to the point of release. But we also know that if we need to, we can release it a month earlier than what we planned, because it's probably going to be 3 months as opposed to 2.
Right.
So we build in a little bit of buffer.
So when you say you release the otters that you've reared here, that or rehabs, that was close.
Rehabbed.
So if you're to introduce that back into the wild, how does that otter transition, and how does it settle into new groups of populations, or how does that?
It won't go into a group because they're territorial, as you said. When they leave here, they are wild. They are as wild as the animals out there already. It's just that they've been in here for a year being fed. So we don't do anything to make them tame. We don't do anything to make them less ferocious. If anything, we try and piss them off as much as we can and unsettle them as much as they can, because that's what will happen in the real world.
Right.
And then when they go, they are ready. And we released 2 yesterday, and they came straight out of the halt, and they were just, Lily was in it. They were completely grumpy, and they just settled back in and gone straight back into the wild and disappeared.
Okay. Because that was one of my theories, that when we see otters climbing fences, and whether or not, I did a video on YouTube about whether otters can climb or not, because I had an otter get into one of my ponds. Yeah. And there's a lot of evidence of it digging, got it on camera digging. I haven't got any evidence of it climbing, but it got in somehow. Yeah. And this was my theory that I sort of came up with after that, which hopefully you'll comment on in a second. But if they're kept in captivity for any period, is that giving them opportunity to learn how to climb? Is that enclosure of the cage or the pen that you've got, do they learn to climb from that? Would they be more adept at climbing than a properly wild? They
won't be any more adept to climbing than a one that's out in the wild. They can climb naturally. That is part of their natural instinct. When they come here, they're normally a bit wet behind the ears, so they can do everything that they should be doing in the wild. They don't know they can do it, so that's why we have a long rehab process, so we can actually bring that out in them over time. All of our enclosures are built or designed to discourage them from climbing,
right,
and discourage them from digging, because they can do both very, very well.
Yeah.
They are very capable climbers, and they can climb, which is why when we say about fencing specs, you have to have an overhang on it. But yeah, generally they will climb. They are capable of climbing.
Because there's that picture that's always published about an otter up a tree. Is that a unicorn, or is that does that happen?
Well, no, it's a real otter.
Yeah. But
but no, it's not. No. Two things about that picture. Another one you're talking about. I've seen it hundreds of times. That picture was taken of a captive North American river otter, which are twice the size of the ones we have.
Right.
And it was in a tree in an enclosure at Slimbridge Wildlife Park, or Slimbridge thing up in Gloucestershire. There's 2 that they had there. And they both died. But that was a captive one, and it literally just used to climb up a tree. So yes, they can climb, but we don't have trees in our enclosures, so we discourage that. That's discouraged from that climbing, because otherwise we don't want them climbing out.
Right.
But they are capable of climbing, so all our overhangs, as you notice, will be facing in as opposed to out.
Okay. So with all this, it must be difficult to, like we were saying earlier, when you release them into the wild, the local fisheries your name must be mud in a lot of the fishery communities. And do you get a lot of personal pushback from fisheries that can see your work and see it as a threat, or are they quite understanding?
Generally, because of the work we've done with angling, initially, then yes, it would be the pushback. What's he doing? Get away from us. Since the work that we've done over the period of years, that thought train is now changing, because they better understand what we do and how we do it.
Yeah.
And that's important for us.
Yeah, I think there's a sustainable future for fisheries. From this conversation, I want fisheries to have ideas of what they can do, or what to look out for, and hopefully we can sort of get into the fishery advice and what you go around to fisheries advising when either an otter gets in, or how to stop them getting in.
Yeah.
And what is because you act as a fishery consultant for otters and bits and pieces. So what does that involve when you're going out to fisheries? What are you advising?
So we will go out. I went out to one fairly recently, not far from here. It's a carp fishery. It used to be a trout fishery, but it's now a carp fishery. And he's had He's got the stock ponds. It is fenced, but it's all fenced as one. And they were going into the stock ponds and taking stock rather than going into the lake. So the first thing to do is, in terms of stock ponds, the deeper they are, the better, because an otter can only hold its breath underwater for about 30 seconds.
Right.
Some people say longer. It's not. It's about 30 seconds-ish on average. So if they have to dive down 20 feet to get to the fish, you're less likely to suffer from predation as you are if you've got a pond that's 6 foot deep.
Yeah.
They'll shatter it.
Yeah.
The fence itself was not brilliant, but it was a fence nonetheless. So the fence is there, and literally we walked round, and I advised him it's very overgrown. There was branches overhanging the fences, and I've showed him, you need to trim a metre either side of the fence and keep that completely clear. Don't leave overgrowth. There was some posts on the outside. Worst thing to do, you might as well put a ladder out there for them.
Right.
Because I'll just use it and climb in. Things like little gaps in gateways, again, and under gates. So a fully grown adult otter can squeeze, which can go 1.2 to 1.3 metres long, nose to tail, and can go up to about 14 kilos. The average is 6 to 10-ish. So it's a big animal.
Yeah.
They can get through a gap of 100 mil.
All right.
So that ain't very big.
No.
And then the other thing was the overhanging trees. Again, overhanging into the fishery, cut them back because they'll climb the tree and they were going in there usually to get in.
Right.
And then, of course, they can't get out, which is when the problems start.
Yeah. Because I think that was what I noticed when I'd got in. And how it's a tiny little, when I was more angry at myself, which is I think where fisheries should, where we should stand is be aware of your weak points or your vulnerabilities, and not take it out on the otter, take it out on be on top of it. And this is where I was angry at myself for not noticing where a skirt had been cleared by, and you could see where you could put your hand underneath and feel the gravel because it had to go through the water, and you could find a clear run where they'd gone under. And as soon as I blocked that, it was fine. Never saw them again. But it's impressive to me how a big site, they found a little hole when you were to get in and to get back out of it.
They will. Whenever we move an otter in from one enclosure to another, because we move them on a regular basis, as they get bigger and bigger, we move them around because for two reasons: A, they need more space, and B, it unsettles them, so it makes them angrier. And the first thing they do is they always go around the perimeter of the fence. The first thing they do every single time without fail, they go right round. They do that a few times, and then they give up.
Okay. What about electric fencing? Is that an option for if they were to go around the perimeter, hit an electric fence? Would they piss off after that?
It's a deterrent, but it's not 100% foolproof because the fur of an otter is insulated against electricity. So if it doesn't touch the nose or the pads of its feet, it's pointless.
Okay.
It does work. I've seen it work.
Yeah.
But it's only a short-term measure. It's more a deterrent than an actual fix.
Right.
The fix needs to be good fencing of reasonable quality, and it needs to be put up in the right way.
Right.
We see it a lot. The mindset. The other thing we try and change with fishery mindsets is that if you've got a fishery and you look at the business plan, nowhere in that business plan is there an allowance or mention of fencing. And it's probably the most important thing that you'll ever spend money on. So we're trying to change people's perception that rather than seeing fencing as an expensive option, it should be seen as being part of the business plan.
Mm.
And that includes the maintenance. It's no good putting a fence up and saying, we've got a fence up, that's going to stop the otters. You have to maintain it. It's like having a car and never having it serviced. It has to be maintained because if you don't, they will find a weak spot. If you get a thing like a rabbit or a badger or a fox digging, they will take advantage of that digging and they will get in.
Mm.
And then the spec of the fence, there's lots of spec out there and it costs tens of thousands of pounds. There's a fishery up the road from here, not far, and they spent nearly 60 grand on what they were sold as otter fencing, had it erected, and they got an otter in. It was out, got it out. But spending 60 grand ain't going to stop on getting in.
No.
You could have put the same fence up for probably 20 grand.
Do you think like
Stopped it.
the common otter fencing is up to the job?
Nope.
It's not.
Nope.
What would you advise?
I've been slated by loads of people for saying it, but it's not.
Right. Okay. I didn't like to mention the brand names, but if like
No.
the common otter fence isn't up to it, what would you fence a fishery with?
Well, you've just walked out through our centre.
Mhm.
You haven't seen anything like some of those otter fences you've seen.
No, it's wild mesh all of it.
Because it's not needed.
No.
Yeah, we've helped a local fishery, again, another local fishery, and he's got a 3-foot high fence with 1-inch mesh holes, wire, 2-foot skirt on the ground pegged in. It's all now tangled in and grown in, so it's nice. And an 18-inch overhang on the outside. A lot of the otter specs you see say you need 6-foot fence with a 45-degree angle overhang, which everybody has. When you go to a fishery, they all have it. What have you got?
I've
Don't
got
have it 45.
no. I just come out the post with tornado wire and then an electric strand around.
Oh, okay. So no overhang.
No,
that's one. So 45-degree overhang, they will climb that at ease.
right.
So whenever we recommend fencing, we always say you can put up a 3 or 4 foot high fence, wooden posts. The mesh you can buy it fairly cheaply, but the most important part of that is the overhang.
Really, yeah.
And it needs to be 90 degrees.
Right.
Now, I've been slated and say, otters don't climb, they won't climb over a 45-degree angle. They do, and they can, and I've seen them do it.
Yeah.
90 degrees, they cannot climb over and get round.
No one's making 90-degree brackets, are they?
No.
No.
But you can, you say no, you can get them. Depending on the road we get them, but you can buy, like, it's like an exaggerated shelf bracket, sort of thing, which you can use those. It's cheap enough to buy an home base or places like that.
Yeah.
It's just a bit of metal, and it's literally an L bracket.
Right.
Screw that to the wooden post,
Yeah.
and put the wire on top.
Right.
But get that at 90 degrees.
Yeah. Okay.
That's far more effective. And that fence, I mean, a mate of mine put one up. It was just over 2 acres of water that he fenced.
Yeah.
Cost him less than 6 grand.
Right.
And ever since he's done it, he's never had predation.
Right. Okay.
You don't need to spend 50, 60, 70, 80,000 pounds on a fence because it ain't up to the job.
Right.
The wire, the tornado wire, isn't welded, so over time the knots on it will move.
Yeah.
And I've already said an otter can get through a gap of 4 inches. It doesn't take much. It's already probably 2 inches, so it's only got to push a little bit,
Yeah.
and it'll get through.
Yeah.
So that wire, to me, is not something I would use. If you
Right.
go to any zoo or any rehab centre, including this one, so you won't see tornado wire being used. And if there is, we have got one out there with a bit of it on there, but at the bottom section, it's all 1-inch mesh.
Right. So how can you like wild mesh panels affordably? Because they'll be 40, 50 quid a sheet, wouldn't they? For
You can buy it on ropes.
right. Okay.
You can buy the wire mesh on ropes. Yeah, we've got. You can buy. I think it's a 50-meter roll of 1-inch mesh, sort of this high.
what gauge wire is that?
Anything from 19 gauge down, 16 gauge.
Right.
The lower the gauge, the better, because obviously the stronger, but the more expensive it would be. So we tend to go sort of 16 gauge is a good wire.
2 3 2
Because remember, they're not biting through it.
No.
So 16 gauge, fence that high, or wire that high, I think you can get for like a little under 100 quid a roll.
Right.
And it's 50 meters.
Right. Okay.
So that's a very affordable way of doing it,
Okay.
as opposed to, a contractor.
Yeah.
And the other thing as well, we try and get fisheries to do, if they haven't got a fence, is say, right, is it a commercial fishery or is it a syndicate? Oh, it's a syndicate, right. Get it into your rules. Every year, you're going to have 4 work parties and get them to do it. It's in their interest. They want to fish.
Mm.
Even if you've got to drop the syndicate fees by 50 quid a year for them, an otter's only got to get in and take 1 fish, and you're going to lose thousands.
Right.
Get them to do the work. Get them to knock the posts in. Get them to put the wire up, because then they also feel more involved because they're actually doing something active and sensible and useful to prevent predation for the thing that they want to be part of.
What would you say to river anglers and river fisheries that fencing isn't even achievable? Or there'll be a lot of people with frustrations that will say, oh, well, I can't fence this fishery.
Yeah.
Even still waters that can't be fenced, or park lakes that can't be fenced.
Yeah.
What would you advise in that situation?
So firstly, I'll answer it backwards. Firstly, the fisheries that say we can't fence, you can always fence. I've had people say to me, we can't fence, it's an SSI site, triple SI site. I've helped them. I've worked with the council. We've had it fenced. We've got it fenced. There's always a way of having it fenced somehow. It might take a bit of work. Sadly, a lot of people are reluctant to do that bit of work, but we'll always help them and we'll always support that. So any fishery in the country can be fenced. There is no reason why they cannot be fenced. And I hear it all the time. We can't fence because of this. We can't fence because of that. All you've got to do is talk to people, explain the situation. We'll back it.
Right.
It can be done.
Okay.
Rivers, very different thing. Obviously, you can't fence rivers. The thing with rivers is that is their natural habitat. That's where they're going to be primarily, the otters. And yes, they will take fish, but they will only take what they need. They have to eat, an adult has to eat 15 to 25% of its body weight each day in order to survive.
Right. Wow.
When it kills a fish, it normally takes the throat area, so just behind the gills and the throat area, and it'll leave like a V thing. That's where all the vital organs are for the fish, so it's maximum return for minimum effort. They might have to kill 2 or 3, which is what they do. Quite often you will see 2 or 3 dead, and people say, well, they kill for fun. They don't, and they say, oh, they know they only eat the juicy bits and leave the rest. Well, the reason they leave the rest is because they've been disturbed by somebody that's found the fish that's dead, so they don't get a chance to come back, but they will go back and finish the other fish.
Right.
So there's a lot of misconceptions about that. Another myth, I hear it all the time, they voided the river of fish completely. There's no fish left in there. Absolute rubbish. Like I said earlier, I'm not going to drink all the cider on my fridge because it's not in my interest too, because you won't buy me any more until shopping day. They just don't do it. It is an absolute myth, and people don't understand the behaviour.
Yeah.
And it is sad. And so, but genuinely within the angling fraternity, we always have a positive reaction because people do want to learn. They are interested in what we're doing. You know, that's why you're here.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully this podcast will help a lot of other fisheries.
Yeah.
Hopefully, and we're always on the end of a phone or an email. So at any time, literally any time, we will help anybody.
That's reassuring, I think, because when you have so much.
Well, that's it. I mean, and if people aren't sure, it's easy to find us on the website. It's easy to find my numbers. Ring us if it's only for a chat. But we'll certainly talk you through it. And if we need to visit you, we will. It doesn't matter where you are in the UK, we will visit you. Yeah. To help and advise. But certainly there isn't a requirement in my eyes to spend, tens of thousands of pounds on a fence. It can be done a lot cheaper and a lot more effectively by, knowing the best section. Yeah. A lot of people say, well, why should I fence? It's not my responsibility. You're rehabilitating otters. There's lots of otters. It's your fault. It's always my fault. There's always otters out there. Why should I have to pay to fence my lake to protect my fish? Why can't you control the otters? It's like, well, when your camera guy goes to Mexico, he's going to leave his front door wide open and he's going to leave the keys in his car on the drive, aren't you? No, of course he's not. It's not going to happen, is it? He's going to lock his house. And that's basically what you need to do. It's your business, you protect it. It's not my responsibility. You want the business, you protect it. And it's as simple as that. And you can protect it, and you can protect it at little money and you can protect it effectively, and that's the whole point. But it's changing people's mindsets.
Yeah, that's half of it, I suppose. In my experience of otters farming carp on a small scale back in Wiltshire, I used to, probably 10 years ago, when I didn't have an otter fence, just had barbed wire around the ponds, and I had 3 low strands of electric, and that works for a long time until it doesn't. You get lazy and let it short out or something, and they're in there straight away. And it was the biggest fish that I'd ever produced that was the first to go. Is there anything in that do they selectively pick out those bigger fish, would you say?
They will go for bigger fish purely because they're slower.
Yeah.
They're slower. The smaller fish are quicker.
Right.
And as I said before a couple of times, it's maximum return for minimum effort. So if they can go in and catch a big fish because it's slower and more torpid in 3 minutes, or have to chase a smaller, stronger, fitter fish for 10 minutes, it's going to go for the slower one.
Right.
It's easier to catch.
With their eyesight underwater, then it's probably pretty adapted to
Their eyesight is terrible.
Is it?
Otter's eyesight is absolutely terrible, worse than mine.
Right.
It's bloody horrendous.
What about what about smell?
So the smell, they can smell underwater.
Okay.
So they exhale a bubble of air. They're vibrissae, the whiskers are called vibrissae, and they're quite stiff. They can sense, so if a fish is moving in the lake or a river, they can sense that smell, so they're on it.
Right.
They exhale a bubble of air, which will hit it and bounce back, and they sniff it, and then it's gone.
Right, because I stocked a lake a few years ago, and there was a new stocking system. There was new lakes, so there's nothing ever in there. Well, it wasn't fenced. We left the stocking till late in the spring, so hopefully the otter would get a chance to fence it in the summer. And obviously no fish in there, so the otters have had no reward to go in and feed in there. When the fish went in, the next week we started to find carcasses, and it's almost like, I wondered if in the transport tank, when we emptied the transport tank on site, which would have had a lot of mucousy water in there, would they have picked up on that with my theory of all that mucousy water out on the grass? They'd have gone and investigated that.
Possible.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was a theory.
They would follow a smell trail, yeah.
Yeah. So then there's a sense of smell is far better than the
hearing the smell is, the hearing and the smell are the primary senses.
Right.
And they are very, very keen.
Okay.
Yeah, they're shit hot. They will smell and hear.
Yeah.
So
I've got a few wives' tales as well. When we go out to fisheries and netting in the winter, and obviously in the winter is when the otter activity is heightened.
Yeah.
Is that obviously to do with the lower activity of the fish, and certainly the females seem to be the ones around the park. The females, water park, Cotswold Water Park, I prefer to park. It's always the big females that seem to be the ones that go first, and then you're left with a stock of males which seem to be more sturdy and faster at escaping otter predation in deeper waters.
Yeah.
But there is a few things that we see fisheries that are fenced, but they still use a few little bits and pieces that I'm going to ask you if there's any, if they're just wives' tales. Or,
I can guess what you're going to say, some of it. But
we've got creosote. With creosote, there's a theory that a line of creosote around your fence would keep them away.
That's probably the most sensible.
Right.
Because if they step on it, it potentially can burn the pads of the feet.
Right.
Otters have a very strange gait, and they're quite long, so their feet are quite far apart. So creosote potentially could work.
Right.
But it's not wildlife friendly.
No.
And for it to actually have any effect on otter, you're probably going to have it a metre wide, because otherwise they could just step over it. So there's no point putting in, a paintbrush wide, metre wide. Does anybody really want a metre wide of creosote?
Well, this is the other thing
around
fisheries as well.
I wouldn't have thought so.
I want that wash.
So whilst it potentially could work,
right,
really a shit idea.
Yeah. Next one, cat repelling devices, like high pitched, censored.
Yeah. No. And the reason they don't is two reasons. A, the hearing frequency on otters isn't known. It's never been tested.
Right.
So, and there's no way of testing it, so you don't know. The second thing is, if they do hear it, they will get used to it. It's like having a plastic heron on the pond after a while.
Yeah.
I had a plastic heron in Corsham on my pond. I had a load of koi and sturgeon. And I woke up one morning, there's bloody 5 of them out there.
Right.
So they took it used to it.
Yeah.
They get used to it. Same as scarecrows. They just get used to it. So no.
Okay. Next one is sensor lights like you'd have on a driveway. People have put them up on posts to keep them out with light, as you said, the sensor.
It might spook them, but they'll get used to it.
Yeah, same again. And radios, we've had the fishery. I know it's had a radio on during the night out of Length.
They'll be. It depends what music you're playing, I suppose. But
but an audio,
they will get used to it.
Yeah, right.
You got to remember they live in a river. They're going to be used to seeing and hearing people. People ain't going to see them or hear them.
Yeah.
But they're going to be used to noise. They're going to be used to voices. So no.
And the last one would be obviously electric strands of fence, which would
again, electric fence strands. They can be a deterrent.
Right.
They won't be a foolproof, so there's no point just putting 3 or 4 strands of electric fence and think it's going to stop them getting in. 2 points. The fur is insulated against low voltage electricity, as I said, so if it doesn't touch the pads of the feet or the nose, it won't have any effect. And normally 3 strands about that high, they can jump over that easily anyway, so
right.
It is a deterrent because it will give them a bolt, obviously.
Yeah.
But it's not something I would rely on particularly.
Right. So the video, when I did that YouTube video on otters, when I was having this issue with one of my ponds and them getting in, and I didn't find any evidence of them climbing. Loads of evidence of them digging, and once they were in, when I walked around the inside of the perimeter of the fence, there's loads that they tried to dig. They'd gone along 5 meters or so, tried to dig. Yeah. And there's a neighbour that overlooks the pond said he saw this otter going round and round, and it by the time I got there, it found its way out.
Yeah.
But when I was to put the cameras up, and I had 3 cameras around the pond, and for nights you wouldn't, probably a week at a time, you'd see nothing, and then all cameras would go off in one night, and it would be like just so active all around all the cameras.
Yeah.
Is that a good sort of indicator of how they hunt? Are they when they go into an area, are they there hunting like a spaniel very actively, or are they quite?
They will. They won't be hunting in groups. That's the first thing.
Right.
So if you see more than one together, it will be a female and a cub, because as I said, the male plays no part. So it will be a female and a cub. They do use lakes to teach the cubs how to hunt. So quite often they'll find fish with scratch marks on the tail or on the fins, and that'll be an otter, and it'll be the females hitting the fish, slow it down for the cub, teaching it. If there's marks all around the neck and the back of the sort of fish around the head area, that'll probably be a mink.
Right. So is there casualties in fish that are wrongly accused and wrongly the fingers pointed at otters? Obviously, quite.
That's common. Yeah, that's quite common. But also vice versa, there will be cases where are not attributed to otter, and they'll look at it and think, actually, that is an otter.
Yeah,
I'll always tell them that, because that's being truthful. You have to be truthful.
Yeah, there's a good example just recently.
So it works both ways.
Yeah. And I had a good example just a week or 2 ago. The fishery consultant I did a lot of work with, he filmed this seagull diving on this bream, picked it up and had it on the bank. But before he put the full video up, he took a picture of the bream on the bank, put it online, and said, "What do you think's done this?" And otter, 100% otter, guarantee otter, 1,000,000% otter. Yeah. And then he put the whole video up, and it sort of no one comments on that, going, "Oh, just
no, it's quietly." They don't know. They don't know. I think a lot of people. There is a very, very anti-minority out there, and they just want it to be an otter. So that's an otter. Adamant it's an otter, whether it's not.
But when you offer a service of trapping otters inside fenced fisheries, how easy is that to capture an otter in a?
It can vary. Sometimes we've caught them within a few days. Another time it's been a few weeks. It would depend. We've only ever set. We've had a lot of calls about trapping, and I mean thousands, literally thousands, since 2016 when we got the license. And we've only ever had to live set 9 traps.
Right.
Everything else has been, and we've responded to every single call, and they've all been rectified by simple advice, i.e. look after your fence, or we've been there, visited and said, right, improvements, do that, and it's solved the problem. Out of those 9 traps that we've set, we've caught 7 otters live, humanely, and released them. The other 2, one we left a little gate open and it went out the way it came in. And the other one, we put a scaffold plank up on the inside of the fence and baited it and actually ran up the fence. They repaired a rabbit hole, went up the fence eating the fish and then jumped out the other side and then couldn't get back in.
Right.
So,
And you'd use fish as bait to get them up there?
yeah.
Right. Because when we first arrived, you showed us around the pens out here, and there's a very young otter, the first one you showed us.
Yeah.
How did that come into your care?
So that was found in Lamorna Cove down in Cornwall, on the coast path, and it was basically sat on the coast path, and then it started running towards a chap with his wife and the kids, and just ran straight towards them. There was a lot of dogs around, there was a lot of people around, so he picked it up. It's not always the right thing to do to pick it up. It's always best to sort of ring us first to get some advice, because sometimes we say actually leave it for a few hours and see if the mother returns. In that case, that was the right thing to do.
Right.
It was on the coast path, so sheer drop one side and load of people the other side. And so he picked it up and took it home to get it into safety, and then we went down and picked it up. And once they pick them up, we have to go and get them. They have to come in for rehab. You can't just put it back out, hope the mother's going to come back because you've handled it. So, best advice if anybody ever finds it, just ring us first, and then we'll.
So that wasn't a sick animal. It was just been.
No, it wasn't sick in any way. It was just very small. It had obviously been separated from its mother for whatever reason. We don't know. We will never know. But what was clear was it needed help, and that's why it came in.
Right. Okay.
So we definitely don't go around the country cub napping.
No.
We go around looking for little cubs that we can pick up and bring in here to do rehabilitation. In the ideal world, we wouldn't be doing anything.
Yeah.
But we are doing stuff, and we have to do it because it's needed.
And what I think Fisheries listening to this, everyone's going to want to know what the future looks like, and if the trends we've seen over the last 10 years, whether they're an indication of where we're going with otter numbers. Are we going to see otter numbers keep multiplying? And I don't know whether there's anything behind it, but it seemed locally that we had a lot of otter predation, and it came in almost cycles of seeing lots of otter activity. Then maybe a year or two where it's less, quite quiet, and then again more recently it seemed to be back again. Is there anything behind that? They
have huge territories, as I've already said.
Yeah.
People often say, on a river particularly, they'll see two or three together, and they'll say, "Oh, we saw the mum and the dad and the cub." They haven't. It's the mum with two cubs.
Right.
The other thing they say is, "We've seen a dog otter." So, how do you know it's a dog otter? Well, it's big. Well, okay, it's fine. Yeah. How do you know it's a dog otter? It's like, well, because it's big. Like, yeah, I heard that. The point I'm getting to, you cannot tell by looking at it whether it's a dog otter or a female otter. It's on its own. There are some feature distinct things about the animal, but it's not 100% by any means. It's way, way down in percentage.
Right.
It's guesstimate. The only way you can tell is getting an otter to stand up and looking for bits or lack of.
Right.
Tell whether it's a dog or not. You cannot look at an otter in a river and say that's a dog otter or a female.
Right. Unless
it's a female that's got two with it, and then that will be a female with cubs, as I said. The other thing we hear a lot is on the river, our river, we've got 15. Somebody said to me, there's 15 otters in a 3-mile stretch. It'd be the same ones. I mean, they swim at 12 mile an hour-ish.
Yeah.
It's here now. Literally minutes later, it's half a mile upstream and somebody else has seen, "Oh, we've just seen 3 as well." Well, it'd be the same ones. So it's just the misconception, it's the myth, it's the misunderstanding of the behaviour. People can't be asked to learn about the behaviour.
Right.
If people get one into a fishery, the first thing I said to Josh Faulkner, don't remove it, learn about it, learn that animal's behaviour, because then you can exclude it. If you exclude that one, it will exclude the others.
Right.
So if you learn about its behaviour and learn how it's getting in, what it's taking, primarily is your fault if it gets through your fence, because you haven't maintained your fence. As I said before, put the fence up, maintain it. It's no good just put the fence up and think it's going to do the job, because it won't.
So will if you're having an otter visit, will it stay? You've mentioned how much ground they can cover. Will they stay and exhaust the food supply if they find an easy?
No,
Right.
no, because again, it's not in their interest to.
No. Okay.
Makes sense. You're not going to eat all your food in one go. You're going to leave it because, particularly if they got cubs. But once they find it's an easy access,
right,
and that's where you have to maintain your fences. And if you haven't got a fence, put one up.
Yeah.
Even if it's temporary, a temporary fence is better than no fence, and it's enough. They're creatures of habit. They don't like change. So if they're going into if it's a lake, and they're coming from here, and they sort of come in this way. If you put something like that up there, they're going to do that all the time. They're going to come to you and think, shit, and they're going to go.
Yeah, that's what I found.
So they don't like, people ring up and they say, I've got a fence, I've got a fishery or a pond. I know which way they're coming in. How can I protect it? I don't want to put a fence up. Well, it's fine. You don't have to. It's your choice. And I'll say, you definitely know where it's coming. Yep, I know where the trail is. I said, put a bench there, or a chair, or a dustbin, anything right in the middle of it, because they'll use that same thing. So when they walk straight up to it, it's something different, and it spooks them.
Right,
it does work, and they bugger off.
Yeah,
they might find somewhere else to get in, but they do, and you can keep moving stuff around until such time you get a fence. But the best protection is a fence.
Yeah. And you said about there's a case, the guy that got locked away that took action illegally. That was the first case of, what did you say? That
illegal persecution of protected species, and what for otters,
right?
In the world, actually.
Yeah.
And he got sent down for 4 months, which doesn't sound big in the grander scale of things, but 4 months is 4 months.
Yeah.
He got a huge fine, lost his firearm certificate, and subsequently lost his business. So, And it's very easy for me to sit here and say people I was judged on that as well. Overall, the result of that actually sent shockwaves through the fishery thing. And it's not what I want to be doing. We've got an internal fishery investigation and support team, which I head up. And that's twofold. That is primarily, again, to go out and help people that make the right choice, i.e. ring us for help, but it's also that we can go out to fisheries if we get reports of illegal traps set as well. And we always take the police with us because they have power of removal, whereas we don't.
Right.
And the chances are, with the police there, we can go in. So we do that as well. But it's not about persecuting people. It's not about sending them to prison. That's not what we want to be doing. We want to be working with them so that they make the right choices in life to protect what they've got.
Yeah, I think that's the underlying sort of story behind all this conversation, I guess, is as an industry, we have to be very careful about how we're perceived and how we approach this. Yeah. It is an issue. Yeah. There's no getting away from it. They are there to eat our fish. And it's really trying to go about it the right way and not do damage to the industry, which is in a vulnerable position if we go about it the wrong way. Well, and like you say, that guy is a good example of, they had to make an example of him, I guess, to otherwise. Yeah,
well, it just said, he said, I'm going to make an example of you, and he did. His life's bloody ruined. He's got a criminal record now for the rest of his life. He's basically be unemployable certainly within the fishery section.
Where do you see the future of the otter populations and the fisheries?
It's going to increase. It will increase, but it will also self-balance. People say there's going to be so many otters are going to be able to run. It won't. They will self-regulate. They will self-balance. They will find their own territories, and it'll all balance out and be at a level kill. Nature will take its course. Some will die. Some will be killed. Whatever. But it will balance out. It can only sustain so many. But they will self-regulate. That's not our job. That's the animal's job.
Yeah. Well, that's I've certainly learned an awful lot over the last hour that we've been chatting, Dave, and thank you very much for taking the time to sit down with me and share what you know with the fisheries. And that is the key thing. Dave is here to help us as a fisheries industry. He's not the bad guy that's farming otters and spreading them around the country. he's there to help us. So thank you, Dave, for your time, and I'll leave all your links for Fisheries to get in touch with you.
Yeah,
if they need
yeah,
your
please
advice
do,
and
yeah.
help.
Yeah, no, appreciate you asking.
Thanks again.
No worries.